The film begins with the lesson of how to love like an Englishman, which is shown by Richard, as he accepts his love and mistakes to a kid named Jake. He recalls the beginning of all this, which stems from his childhood. Richard grew up above a great party, all thanks to his parents, who would often make love during the parties in the kitchen. At school, little Richard used to love listening to his father's lectures. Richard's dad was a teacher at Cambridge University, but he hated authority, which is why everyone loved him. Richard watched him stick it up to his bosses because they wouldn't let him teach Byron during the romantic age lessons. Richard wanted to be just like him, and that's what he did. He also teaches rebellious takes on literary theories in his classes at Cambridge, which earns him the same copious amounts of crushes from his female students. One of these students is a young woman named Kate, whom Richard has been dating for 6 months. She wakes him up on a settee, excited to introduce him to her corporate slave father. Richard is surprised to see that he has been dating Kate for so long, as all his relationships have been much shorter than that. She instructs him to make it to Heathrow at 6 p.m. sharp, after which he leaves on his motorcycle. When he gets there that evening, he sees a gorgeous woman, much older and clumsier than Kate. She breaks her heel before entering the building and loses her phone in the sewer line. But none of this phases her, as she continues to strut wearing just one heel and doesn't want her phone back, because it was stressing her out anyway. Richard sits down at the bar and reads a text from Kate which says that she'll be running late. The interesting woman sits on the seat next to him at a bar and tosses some of her belongings in the trash. On Richard's inquiry, she reveals that she doesn't want her phone because she's cutting herself off from the world. They have a brief discussion on their life philosophies and comment on how they're both alone at a hotel bar on a sunny night. It doesn't take Richard too long to woo her with his charm, and he moves closer to her. The hotel staff brings back her phone, and now she's back on the grid. Even though she didn't need the help, she admits that it's nice to be taken care of, once in a while. She believes that chivalry is gone, and Richard has his 2 cents to offer on this topic as well. He claims that he can tell within 1 minute of meeting someone if he wants to be with them. He desires 1 more minute with her, and they're fantasizing about everything that could be done in that minute when Kate gets there. She rushes to the woman, whose name is Olivia, and hugs her lovingly. Kate asks Olivia how she ended up there, and she explains that she was in Dublin for a book festival, and flew there when she found out about their family meeting. But now she knows that their dad flaked on them, and Richard stands up in astonishment to learn that Olivia is Kate's older sister. Kate properly introduces Richard and Olivia to each other, who spend the rest of the dinner in awkwardness. At dinner, Kate tells Richard the story of how her dad was leading a double life and had a mistress, with whom he had Olivia. All hell broke loose when he was exposed for raising 2 families at the same time. But that's what drove Olivia and Kate closer to each other. They both decided to make a pact of no secrets and absolute honesty to each other so that their sisterhood would never be jeopardized. This is daunting for Richard, who wonders how Kate will react once she finds out that he hit on another woman in her absence. The subject changes to Olivia's boyfriend, Alan Sloan, who is a famous romance writer. Olivia is his editor, and they're apparently deep in love, which is daunting for Olivia because she reciprocated Richard's advances a while ago. Olivia can't hold herself back anymore and criticizes Richard for dating his student. Kate requests her to be nice, but Olivia lashes out at Richard, accusing him of trapping her sister. She claims that Kate is about to graduate and go home, which makes her the perfect catch for him. Olivia goes on to warn Kate about the fact that, despite Richard being so attractive, he only charmed the pants off of her. She informs Kate that this may feel like love, but it is actually just a fling. She adds that this is probably because of Kate's daddy issues, but her boyfriend is a self-centered, cheating womanizer who can't be trusted. Kate retaliates by asking Olivia about how young she was when she ran off with Anwar, one of her boyfriends. Olivia responds that she did it because she thought she was pregnant, which leads to Kate dropping the bomb that she is pregnant with Richard's child. Richard reacts solemnly to this, as he is overwhelmed by this wreck of a dinner. He steps out for some fresh air, which gives Olivia the impression that he's already trying to make a run for it. Kate follows him outside and admits that this is a lot to take in, so she's giving him an out right here, right now. She got offered a really good job in Los Angeles, which is where she is moving after graduation. She is certain that Richard would enjoy living in Los Angeles and make a great father, but all he wants right now is to get out of this building and get some air. She goes back inside, and he throws up. The next day, Richard visits his dad at his place for dinner. He greets his new wife Joan, after which Richard's father questions him about his plans for the future. He was the head of his department at Richard's age, and thinks that his son is far behind. Richard's father notices his son's grumpiness today, and seeks to know what's bothering him. Richard wants to know why his parents got married in the first place, judging that Joan is his 4th wife. Richard's father explains that Richard's mom kept him fed and satisfied, and that was enough for him. Richard points out that one's wife could also be their friend, and an actual partner to start a family with. This convinces Richard's father to believe that his son has fallen for his young student girlfriend. Richard's father advises him to not go steady with an American woman, as they completely change and get obese once they have their claws into a man. It's very clear how low Richard's father thinks of American women, which isn't of much help to him. The next morning, he rushes to Kate and lets her know that he's ditching Cambridge, and is fully on board with her plans for the family they're about to start together. Fast forward to now, Richard feels like he is a new man when he holds his son in his arms for the first time. His son, Jake, babbles as Richard talks to him and plays with him. Richard and Kate bring Jake from the hospital into a Los Angeles mansion that Kate's dad bought, out of his guilt of never showing up. Richard delivers his first lesson at a college in Los Angeles, but the students there aren't as inspired as the ones in Cambridge. All American students care about his foolish fun, and they don't respond to Richard's lectures like he expects them to. He is stuck teaching in a mediocre college right now, and has a low chance of being hired at UCLA. He's having lunch with Jake one day at a noisy beach restaurant when he cusses. Jake repeats it, but Richard teaches him to speak in a proper British accent, instead of an American one. Jake notices Kate going away in a Hummer with a man, but Richard only sees the car instead of Kate, and sends a voice message to Kate about this. Kate gets paranoid that Richard has caught on to her having an affair behind his back. Richard is at home when he picks up a call from Olivia, who is in New York. Alan is putting up a life-sized portrait of himself in their house, and Olivia wants to talk to Kate, but she is still working at the bank. Olivia is really excited to share some news with Kate, as she eyes the ring on her finger. She is about to break the news to Richard too, but Kate enters the house, ready to come clean about her infidelity. Both sisters simultaneously overwhelm Richard again, as Olivia mentions her engagement to Alan, and Kate admits that she's in love with someone else. This causes a misunderstanding, until Kate hangs up on Olivia, and explains her situation to Richard. She knows now that she was young and working through her daddy issues when she got pregnant with Jake. Richard tried to do the right thing, and he's a great father, but it can't be denied that he never really loved Kate. But she claims that her boyfriend Brian does, which is more insulting for Richard, because he found him to be a little idiot from Kate's office. Before Richard walks out, he makes it very clear that Kate can leave him if she wants, but he will never leave Jake. Kate insists on talking it out, but Richard moves to the pool house, where he continues to stay for 2 years. This is because Kate and Brian hate his presence there, and because he wants to be close to Jake. He often plays with Jake after seeing his young girlfriend off. This was all going well, until Richard got a visitor at the university one day. His father's friend, Professor Pickard, received Richard's job application, and is here to invite Richard to a soiree he's holding tomorrow. This is an opportunity for Richard to suck up to the people he wants to work with. Meanwhile, Olivia is at the doctor's office for a checkup to start her fertility journey with Alan. But he couldn't care less because he is very self-obsessed and is busy flirting with a nurse, who is one of his fans. Olivia smacks him with her phone to get his attention, and acts dumb about it, as if she didn't do it on purpose. Richard practices baseball with Jake, who is apprehensive of his skills. Richard motivates Jake, and teaches him a technique when Brian arrives. He takes over the practice and sidelines Richard, as if he is closer to Jake than his own father. Jake accidentally hits Richard's face with the baseball, causing him to step back for a while. Kate approaches Richard to remind him about the conference she and Brian need to attend together. They'll be gone to Atlanta for 4 days, during which he'll be responsible for Jake. She gives Richard the multiple copies of Jake's schedule she has printed out. Olivia returns to her in Alan's new apartment, where she finds his and some women's clothes thrown all over the place. She goes to their bedroom to find Alan cheating on her with her fertility doctor. Olivia is enraged and traumatized, and she rightfully takes it all out on Alan. Richard gets the letter that, if he and Kate fail to attend the next interview for his green card application, the process for his deportation will begin shortly. When he goes to his dentist appointment a while later, the nurse gives Richard some medicine that prohibits him from drinking alcohol. Obviously, he is not much of a rule follower, so he drinks at the professor's soiree despite consuming those medicines. Professor Pickard takes him to some important faculty members to get them all acquainted. Richard finds them all insufferable, and relies on alcohol to get through the conversation. He keeps ranting about how annoying they all are, especially Professor Pickard, to a gorgeous woman standing beside him at the party. He is humiliated when he finds out that she is Professor Pickard's wife. He abruptly takes his leave, and hits a parked car as he is about to head out of the soiree. His car keeps swerving on the empty road, until some cops pull him over for driving drunk. He ends up being arrested, and Kate has to bail him out, which leads her to give him the silent treatment. They finally get to their house, where Olivia arrives in a cab with all her bags packed. Olivia mentions that she was dumped by Alan to Richard, and he relates to her, because that's exactly what Kate did to him. Richard is told that Olivia is here to take care of Jake in Kate's absence, since he can no longer be trusted. Kate is very upset with his reckless and degenerate behavior, and threatens to not cooperate with his immigration process if he keeps up with this attitude. That night, Richard is awakened by a call from his father because of the different time zones. His father asks about his grandson, in his classic rude style, but Richard doesn't allow that. He quickly hangs up on his father, because he realizes that he's running late for his meeting with his immigration lawyer. His recent dewey might be the reason why he might get deported, even though his son is a citizen. He can still avoid that by joining a recovery program to make up for his dewey, getting Kate to cooperate at the interview, and getting a good stable job. Richard is wasting time on his balcony that afternoon when he watches Olivia enter the house. She sees a notification on her phone due to Alan's new highly publicized romance and curses her life. She stomps over to the car and hits some plants in an effort to get it out of parking. Richard comes down to check up on her, and she acts nonchalant. Richard sees right through her and lets her borrow his car. She is about to wreck his car too when Richard stops her to alert her about the one-way system at Jake's pickup. He joins her and witnesses her rash driving, because she learned it in Mexico. Her phone rings, and Richard puts it on speaker for her. She talks with the publisher, who constantly hits on her, and she plays along because she submitted a chapter to him. Olivia is hoping to go from editor to author, and rants about how easy it is for men to move on once she's done with her call. Richard mocks her for her interaction with that man, Tim, and she retaliates by acting out the noises men make when they're pleased. But she ends up being humiliated, as Jake and his teachers hear her, and Jake pinpoints one of the sounds to be associated with Richard. Richard and Olivia are requested to sit down, because Jake's teachers have some concerns they'd like to talk about. Turns out that Jake was sent to the principal's office today for his use of foul language, most of which is British. The teachers think that all of this is because Richard is with a new raunchy woman, Olivia, because of what they just heard. On their way back home, Richard makes Olivia drop him off at his Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. But he doesn't let her, or Jake, know why he's there. At the meeting, Cindy and Richard are the only two new members. Cindy accepts that she is an alcoholic, and Richard does the complete opposite, and remains his arrogant self. Yet his life remains sad and pathetic. On the other hand, Tim likes Olivia's writing and promises to launch her career. Richard is at his meeting when his lawyer informs him that an agent is already spying on him, due to the beginning of his investigation. Richard spots the agent at the meeting, and goes out of his way to create a positive impression of himself. But it's painfully obvious that he's trying too hard. When he is confronted about what led him to get behind the wheel of a car while drunk, he is unable to open up, and sits back down. He has to rush out of his meeting though, because he gets a call about Jake crying and having a meltdown. Richard gets home to see an apologetic Olivia and a sobbing Jake, whom he calms down with his love and affection. Jake narrates between his sobs that he had a nightmare, and found both of his parents missing when he woke up. That's why he got scared, and has been crying uncontrollably since then. Richard deals with this like a wonderful father, and gets Jake back to normal in no time. Olivia watches all this, and silently admires Richard for being an affectionate and present father. He tucks Jake in bed before consoling his son's doubts and fears. Later on, Olivia apologizes to Richard for being useless. She finds herself incapable of taking care of any children, and feels as if everyone is doing well in life except her. He assures her that he isn't doing well either, and they both sit down to have some soup that Olivia cooked. It tastes horrible, and she feels even worse. She compliments Richard's parenting skills, and he thanks her. This makes her realize that she likes it when he says her name. Richard finds it interesting how most women begin to hate him with time. But Olivia started with hate to begin with, and now she's grown to like him in her own twisted way. That night, Richard watches Olivia in her room from his bedroom window. She tries to use the trick Richard taught Jake, to blow one's fears away. Her eyes fall upon her hand, and she notices that she's still wearing Alan's engagement ring. She takes it off painfully, and Richard watches in fascination. The next morning, Olivia and Richard send Jake to his friend's house for a sleepover that was planned weeks ago. Richard is drinking by himself in the pool house, and peeks out his window. This gives him a show of Olivia in her room in nothing but her lingerie, as she is getting dressed to go somewhere. He walks over to the main house with a bottle of wine to share with her, when he finds Tim inside. Olivia is all dressed up, unlike Tim, who is wearing a towel. That's enough to make Richard leave, but Olivia later clarifies that Tim only came over to work, after which he went surfing. She is willing to accept his bottle of wine, now that Tim is gone. Olivia comes to the pool house, and they raise a toast to their friendship. They both confide in each other about their work problems and tricky personal lives. One thing leads to another, and Richard finds himself praising and kissing Olivia. Surprisingly, she kisses him back, and they end up spending the night together. They're starting to cuddle the next morning when they hear the noises of Kate and Brian returning home earlier than planned. Olivia sneaks out of the pool house and jumps into the pool just in time. Kate is confused about why her sister is swimming pool, but Olivia focuses on catching her up to Jake, who's at his friend's house. Later that day, Richard confesses to his friend that for the first time in a long while, he slept with someone and it actually meant something. When his friend finds out that he slept with Olivia, she warns him that this will eventually reach Kate. This will make Kate angry and could lead to Richard's deportation. Richard runs to his house as soon as he becomes aware of the trouble he could land in. When he gets there, Kate is swimming in the pool. She brings up that Olivia told her about how responsible and nice Richard has been in her absence. Kate feels bad for threatening to not come to his green card meeting, and apologizes for how harsh she's been to him lately. Richard is relieved to know that everything is fine between them. He discovers Olivia smoking in the bushes, and they both admit that they can't stop thinking about last night. Olivia feels guilty and wants to come clean to Kate, but Richard stops her. They are interrupted by Jake, who comes over to them to report the arrival of an old man. Richard is shocked to see that his father has flown all the way here, because his calls are being ignored. Richard's dad meets both Olivia and Kate, and remarks on how they're both different but extremely beautiful. Kate is about to make room for him in the main house, but Richard practically drags him to the pool house. Richard's father is here to visit him and Jake. He even gifts Jake one of his most prized possessions. But Richard is more concerned about the two sisters, who have begun to talk now. He tries to get to them, but his father takes offense, so he's stuck there in his paranoia. Olivia and Richard take Jake and his granddad to the beach, where Richard begs her to wait until his green card meeting. Richard can't keep himself off of Olivia, and his father sees them together. At the pier, Jake wants to pee, and his granddad encourages him and Richard to do it right there on the pier, in Englishman style. Olivia looks at them and laughs. Richard's dad is having a great time at the pool house that night when he's questioned about his real reason for being there. Turns out that Joan left him, but his attitude agitates Richard so much that he snaps at his father. Richard finally finishes his 10 sessions of the meetings, but the counselor won't sign his form because he didn't mean anything he said in those meetings. He steps out of the meeting and rants to Cindy about wanting a drink, or smoking the dad left behind. He goes his own way, and carries on with his day afterward. He sticks it up to the authorities, and messes up his audition lecture in the process. He calls his dad to tell him all about it, and complains about him leaving before he can apologize. Professor Pickard shows up at the door to let him know that he actually got the job. Richard is overjoyed and shares this with Olivia, but he accidentally confesses to sleeping with her in front of Brian and Kate. Kate feels betrayed, and kicks Olivia out. Richard's meeting goes very badly as Kate doesn't show up, and his recovery sessions are also not completed. Cindy was the undercover agent, and witnessed him in possession of marijuana, which is a felony. All his lawyer could do was get him an hour with Jake, during which he narrates everything to his son. Richard is handcuffed and taken away from Jake, who cries in Kate's arms. Richard ends up back at Cambridge, where he reconciles with his sick father. Then, he crosses the border illegally to stay in America, and clears the air with Kate. They all show up to Olivia's book launch together, where the sisters make up. Richard and Olivia profess their love to each other, and share a passionate kiss on the beach during the sunset. The film ends with them scattering Richard's father's ashes in the Paradise Sea that he helped his son get with some inheritance money. Richard marries Olivia to seal their love, and his chance to stay in America with Jake.